Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Sanjeev Goel and welcome to the DrCrypto show, where we interview the top leaders in the crypto universe. Hi everyone, today I have Mr. Shahal Khan, who's a private investor in cryptocurrencies, well, I guess one of the early investors and a thought leader in the whole world of crypto. And I'm really excited to have you on board today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. So maybe just, to give our viewers a little bit of a background, like how, tell us about how did you even get involved, and when did that happen? Like kind of tell us a little, your history of how you got to where you are now.
Well, it funnily enough happened. I would say I'm not as probably as early as some of the other guys that you're going to have on the phone because not on the phone on the on the stage, I should say.
Yeah.
Some of the guys are gonna have been doing this since 2009 and mining since it started. But I really got involved in around 2017 when I was buying the Plaza Hotel, and I was putting together the actual consortium, and one of my friends actually talked to me about this whole idea of this, the blockchain, and actually how it could be a not only a form of crowdsourced funding, but also a form of actually taking liquid assets and having them become tradable around the world, which I found fascinating. And since I was investing in real estate, I started to research how I could utilize that in terms of future funding of real estate, because I thought it would be a very unique way of democratizing investment in real estate, especially properties like the Plaza, large real estate properties that only a few people in the world can buy. And
Right.
I was already thinking that the world and the financial systems of the world must change. It can't be so skewed because it's a
Mhm.
very small private club of people that are able to invest in stocks, bonds, large properties, and this eliminates really the majority of the world's population for having the capability to participate in those investments and see the returns.
Mhm.
And that's when it started. I basically announced, I hired a company and I made them write a white paper. And I said, after I
Mhm.
buy the Plaza, I want to tokenize it and I want to split it up into millions of pieces and have people own little pieces of it. So and it
Does
went
that
all
actually
the way
exist
through.
right now? Is it like
Huh?
that right now? The plaza, is the plaza
No,
tokenized
because
in that manner?
no, because we ended up, two things happened. One
Mm.
is that, the SEC and all these guys, when I made the announcement, it was all over CNBC and the news and all over the press. But the problem is we didn't have regulations. We still don't have full regulations in the United States, in order for that offering to be done as a security offering, right? Because in those days, ICOs were going on and people were just, doing all kinds of offerings, but the SEC didn't know what it was, and it viewed it as a place that was rife for fraud or whatever. And so we got contacted very quickly by lawyers in the SEC saying, because it was such a huge announcement to make, because you're taking something that isn't small but very well known, and you're utilizing a new method of funding it. And so the SEC was the first one. It really went a little bit, hard on us and asked us, what are we doing? And then we
Mm.
realized that the laws weren't there. And I didn't want to take a chance on doing an ICO and not being in the, compliance, right? It's just, it's not worth it, right?
No,
It's better
that's
to
not
do
worth that price.
everything the right way. Yeah. And wait. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're an economist by background. So what was it about this technology of blockchain? I guess, how did you feel it was, I've heard this thing that, the internet was to communication, what, blockchain might be to finance. Like, what was it so much about this that really attracted you? What did you see?
Yeah. Well, it's not actually what attracted me wasn't really the technology of blockchain. I mean, to be
Uh-huh.
frank, I think the blockchain technology is a little bit heavy, and I don't think it's going to last very long, because if you look at the amount of transactions that can happen once it gets going, it's gonna be too heavy, and you can't have
Right.
that kind of processing power all the time working on it because it's literally, blocks of transactions auditable all the time, connected to each other. Is asking
Mhm.
for a gigantic amount of weight to be created on the system once it really gets going. So I
Mm.
didn't really like the technology. What I liked was the actual premise of the fact that, as an economist, I understand what is going on with countries and printing of money, and the debt burdens. And I felt that the only way to get countries and people out of that debt burden is to create a more of a peer-to-peer system that allows them to trade without inflation. And then the second thing is to be able to have another source of funding other than Wall Street or the banks that may be affected by a downturn. So that was two
Mm.
reasons. The third was, there's $200 trillion stuck in hard assets, and that's another way to release liquidity to the system in order to create a new set of economic growth that isn't being used. The last thing is, of course, transparency. And
Mhm.
I mean, once you have a system like this that's properly implemented, it's very hard for people to steal, do corruption. And, having been an investor in India and Pakistan and these places at a large
Mhm.
level, it's rife with corruption. And, honestly, it's good for, like usual, a certain amount of the few that make a lot of money, but it's bad for
Yeah.
the whole. And I really felt that if all the transactions financially could be done, as well as bids with governments, through a transparent, auditable system, it will stop a
Mhm.
lot of corruption from happening, and that'll also release a lot of value. Yeah,
So what do you think, like, if you're saying blockchain may not be the answer, the way it is in its current form, what do you think needs to happen that it can become sustainable and meet all these
yeah,
lofty kind of aspirations of a decentralized, transparent,
yeah,
system? What do you think
yeah.
it could look like?
Well, I knew you were gonna ask that as soon as I said it.
Yeah, I know.
I
You
was
opened up a
hoping you
whole
wouldn't
can of
because I'm
fish.
not a technical guy, but more of a economist and a financial guy. But the lucky thing is that I actually, because I saw that, I actually invested in a company that has been working, on that solution for now 4 years. And I'm lucky enough that their co-founder is a very technical guy. But so what I'm going to tell you is basically a parrot from him, and
Yes.
I'm actually gonna that's one of the guys you should have on the show, actually. Yes, also.
Okay.
So this guy, who's a friend, he was basically the one that was designing the systems for Bloomberg in the early days, in the 90s.
Right.
And literally, what he saw was exactly this problem of information, number one,
Mhm.
not being secure, but information
Mhm.
building up, to a massive degree where you have massive databases, and then the interactions and all the transactions, as they grew, and if they were going to be put on ledger systems, that's what finance is. It's gigantic amount of ledger systems. It was just getting to be so huge that it was hard to
Mhm.
keep track of data. And so at the end of the day, all of this stuff is just data. It's like, what our DNA is, right? So basically what he designed, which is what I loved, and he actually told me about this when he was pitching, the company over a
Mhm.
lunch, and he said, well, it's like a fractal system, in the universe, which, I'm also I'm a student of metaphysics and things like this,
Mm.
so I understand what he was saying. And I couldn't believe that this technical guy was talking about designing something in a metaphysical format, where he would design something that's akin to the information stored in a human DNA. So let me break that down further. What he was
Yeah.
saying is, look, if
Yeah.
the information in the data had a marker on it itself, and
Mhm.
basically it would be put together as fractals come together to form an image, right?
Uh-huh.
Those fractals, because of their keys, right, it could be in the DNA or a fractal gets together because it knows what keys that cojoin it. So if the DNA, or in this instance the data, is already programmed with certain keys, And those keys are constantly updated on its interactions. It would automatically know all the history of it, i.e., the human data, right? DNA. I mean, no matter what, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if we're alive for 1 year or a billion years. Our DNA has an algorithm that's embedded in the DNA itself. But he designed
Mhm.
it so that one DNA piece, one fractal piece of data will know what preceded it, and then if something is created, it would just mark that one. So I mean, all this stuff could be stored offline, but if need be, you could retract this data going back, many folds, for example. So that way, it's impossible to crack the system because the data itself knows where it came from. It's like an intelligent piece of data.
Completely, a completely new paradigm. I'm trying to get
And I
my head
hate
around
to
this.
say this, but we're not going to need blockchain, once this
That's
guy
right.
gets
It's not
going.
even blockchain. It's something totally different. It's a new way of storing
Yeah,
data.
but that doesn't change the fact of the digital currency. And I mean, I haven't really talked ever. I mean, you're the first guy I'm ever telling about this technology. It's actually out in another form right now. The first
Mhm.
time we're using it right now is actually with the NHS in the UK. And I
Okay.
mean, you're a doctor, so you understand this. So we're protecting the client data,
Yeah.
that is being transmitted between open systems, because a lot of doctors are working from home and they have EMR
Yeah.
systems and all that sort of thing going on. So this data is actually protecting the client data from being hacked. And so the NHS, for example, is using our system and this data security to ensure that all the vaccination records, all the client data records are being securely kept. And so we were very happy that the major client, the first major one was the NHS. The next one we're going to try to do this is with some of the large cloud providers in the U.S. government, because these are trial runs for us, but they're very important trial runs because we're able to see that happening, that all this data that is being linked together is now being done very much, as I would say, is the next thing I wanted to say about this, in a quantum format, because this is
Right.
perfect for quantum computers, right? And I
Uh-huh.
think in one of my other sessions that we had together, I was talking about how quantum computers would just annihilate the need for mining, right? I mean, there's no need. I mean, one of my friends, that's another guy, by the way, that I'll invite to your show, who's on the board of Cambridge Quantum. I
Mhm.
mean, if they put one of their quantum computers on that has 150 qubits, just
Mhm.
that one computer will wipe out all the miners. They'll mine all the bitcoins. I mean, in a matter of, like, I don't know. I won't say the time frame because he's the expert, but
Right.
it's going to happen
Okay.
very fast. And then it becomes fun, right? Because mining is gone. No one's going to be wasting all the energy mining, and then you have
Right.
quantum computers running the algorithms, and that's what I see as the future of this, which makes sense. Because right now it's like we have a car from 1930. It looks cool. Those cool cars in the 30s. They look big and they
Yeah,
have
it's kind of fun to drive, but it's not really economical.
so,
It's not sustainable.
yeah, it's a
So that's
sexy looking car, but it's big and clunky, and it has no safety mechanisms. And you crash it, you're dead. There's no airbags. Your face is gonna hit us, like a wooden steering wheel. So
I'm just trying to understand because you just sent something to me, just WhatsApp about this, this decentralized village rural power, I guess project where like they're decentralizing, I guess, the energy, and
yeah,
that's causing. I mean, I think through small generators, and that's
yeah.
being using some coin for that. So maybe just take us through, like, so are you saying that isn't miners a good way of, isn't that a good situation, like creating like decentralized miners? If we like all put it all into one centralized place, isn't that gonna, isn't that gonna
Yeah.
put too much power in one area?
Yeah, well, this is a very interesting concept. It's done by my friend Steve Johan, another guy you should have on your show, by the way, because he's the one that came up with the concept what coin. And basically he's being funded by the US government and Microsoft, because he came up with the idea actually to electrify villages and to
Hmm.
have basically local generation of electricity through solar power and containers with batteries. and then that is distributed in the village, and then that's connected to Microsoft is coming out with basically a data center in a container where you could have it in the village, and it has a satellite uplink, and then everybody in the village is able to be connected to the net. But what happens at that point is when you have energy generation that's 24/7 in
Yeah.
a lot of these climates where there's enough energy coming down from the sun, that's not a problem. And then you have a data connection. You're able to create a microgrid economy. And his vision, which I think is amazing, is if you monetize the actual kilowatts, right? So the kilowatts actually become a form of energy, and well, they are a form of energy, but basically they become a form of currency. So, like the famous saying that energy is never destroyed; it's just transferred. So what they're saying is that this energy that is created is now converted into a coin, and then that coin has a monetary value because it was created through a mechanism that had an investment in it, and then this is distributed within the village, and then this allows the people in the village to create an economy and exchange those coins
Mm.
locally, for example, as well as connect it to a larger system where they could distribute other products now created within the village due to this economy that is local. And that's a way to get people on board with having the local resources to have electricity without being subsidized, because a lot of the local villages in places like Africa, Southeast Asia, South America, they just don't have the subsidies either used properly by their own government, or they
Mhm.
just aren't large enough in economic means or interests or priorities for the governments
Mhm.
to go down there and actually run transmission lines and do everything else. So this is a way really to monetize them, through this new initiative of creating a crypto based economy for them that they can trade on. And so they could actually generate X amount of watt coins to generate other products, and then those coins are stored in their digital wallets, and then those could be transferred to a marker like a US dollar or a Bitcoin or an Ethereum that they're staked to. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get my head around this. So what you're basically saying is that we're allowing what this tokenization allows is that we can take some hard assets or allow people to generate some type of wealth, but from
Yes.
their own. We
Yes.
give more opportunity for people to create wealth, I
Yes.
guess, in a way. I
Yes.
mean, here
Yes.
they're creating energy. In this case, they're creating energy which they would never been able to transform into wealth.
That's correct, because the problem is that you don't have an capability for them to afford the electricity in the first place, or
Yeah.
to be able to have the data uplinks and be connected to the internet. So
Hmm.
the idea here is that the amount of energy that's generated, and
Hmm.
distributed in their society could be
Hmm.
accounted for, and essentially the amount that is sent over to them by generating the solar power results in what are called watt coins, which are what's owed back to the people that supplied the goods. Let's just say, yeah. So
Right.
those
Yeah.
watt coins build up, but then those people can go out and then generate new economic means, in order to generate products or services, and
Hmm.
those are created for the products and services. And
Hmm.
so essentially what we're doing is we're investing in their communities by giving them this ability, and
Hmm.
not actually charging for the equipment or for the data centers, but we're part owners of this watt coin that gets generated, and they can start exchanging those for goods and
Hmm.
services locally. And then obviously we're going to attach that watt coin, because it's a generated asset. It was generated out of something, to
Hmm.
a larger currency base like a Ethereum or a Bitcoin in the future, where people can trade and exchange that through the
Right.
exchanges. So this watt coin would be listed on an exchange, so it would have a value, right? And then
Hmm.
that value would be geared towards a price of electricity, which is a kilowatt. The
Hmm.
good thing is the price of a kilowatt, because it's a energy piece, is locked in. So in a lot of these countries, the electricity generation per kilowatt hour is a known price. It's
Yeah.
actually a known. So if you know a price of a thing and you put it into an asset, right? And which is what is amazing here. What I love about this concept is that you actually store energy, and that energy then becomes a currency. It becomes a
Yeah.
tangible thing you could trade. Like
To
it's the
trade it. Yeah.
same term that says carbon, right? I mean, what are carbon certificates, right? I mean,
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
sees the carbon, nobody knows what it is, but guess what? You've trapped the carbon in a certificate, and now it takes on a monetary value that somebody's assessed because they looked at the amount of, I don't know, carbon release versus the trees on the planet or something, right? They made an algorithm, and now there's a value of the carbon. So this is the same thing. There's a value of the electricity per kilowatt
Hmm.
hour that was generated by the sun. Now it's
Yeah.
trapped in the coin. So now this
Yeah.
coin is generating, right? And we're generating a lot more coins than the solar power plant or the data center cost, and it's building up. And because there's a watt coin that is listed on an exchange, as these watt coins build up, and this thing's
Hmm.
on an exchange and has a monetary value, now it could be traded on an exchange. So these watt coins will be on the various exchanges and then
Yeah.
traded. And as more and more built up like a treasury, which are generated, it's like a reverse mining. In mining right now, you're using the electricity to generate a coin that doesn't
Yes.
exist because you have
Yes.
to go do some work or whatever it is, right? Here, you're using the sun to generate the
Sun.
coin. It's the reverse, and it's save
Yeah.
energy. So
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing. It sounds like just the, I mean, it's not necessary that you need blockchain, and even in this technology, this is really not a blockchain technology per se. It
yeah,
could have been
well,
on
I
any.
mean, you can say that if you want to keep track of all the watt coins, you have to put it on a ledger, right? So
It's
then
on
it goes
Ledger.
to the blockchain. Unless you use my friend's technology, throw it on there, and you put on that thing, and then it's fine. Then then it's really decentralized. Actually,
Right.
blockchain is not decentralized because no matter what, all the computers have to lock into each other. So no matter
Mhm.
what, blockchain, even if it's spread out all over the world, it's centralized because
Mhm.
globally it's spread out, yet it's connected. So it's not
Right. Right.
decentralized. I mean, when you look at what my friend did, in this company, it's called Cyvolve, the company. What he did is he really made it decentralized because you could have different nodes,
Hmm.
storing the data, and they only
Hmm.
interact with each other when they need to. So that's
Hmm.
really decentralization. Yeah.
It's interesting. And so, just this thing about this centralized, decentralized. So, I know KB, who we know both, who was mentioning that like a lot of the data could be stored off the chain too. Like it doesn't have. Let's say if it's on Ethereum, people are storing vast like the data off, and a little piece is touching the chain. Is that? I mean, I'm not explaining it potentially right, but
Yeah.
is this
You
not a
know,
way also to deal with this problem of not everything being on the chain?
Well, the problem is that once again, it's. I'm gonna go back to like maybe the 18th century, right? It's like imagine when our grandparents had their papers in one place and not in another place, and some guy died, and then they don't know where the papers are for your land
Yeah.
in India, right? I mean, then
Yeah.
you're really messed up because you can't trace, what's gone wrong, and you
Hmm.
break the chain. What is the blockchain, right? So
Hmm.
I mean, I understand why people are doing this, for security purposes for the currency and putting them in cold storage and things like this. But what you need actually instant access for all the information for whatever reason. If somebody needs to get it, and let's say there's a massive audit going on one day, and they need to
Hmm.
understand the trace of a certain financial transaction, and they need to know instantaneously where
Hmm.
the transaction history was completely. Well, at that
Hmm.
point in time, they need that entire blockchain to be available, right? And if
Yeah.
certain aspects of that blockchain for security purposes are not available, it's going to defeat the purpose. And I think in the future, part of the attraction to this is instantaneous transactions and being able to
Hmm.
transact instantaneously. Like, one of the things that I would love to see is real estate being instantly transacted all over the world, like you're buying shares. But even today, when you buy a share, it takes, on the Nasdaq or the New York Stock Exchange, and you clear it and you sell it. It still
Hmm.
takes 4 or 5 days to clear and come to your bank account because you're still
Right.
having transactions happening between systems that are not connected together, right? and they have to
Right.
sort of liaison with each other. And I mean, the same thing with, now they've gotten, the banking wire transactions down to 24 hours, right? But to get to the momentous speed of instant transactions, where you're either sending a payment, paying for something,
Mhm.
or you're actually selling an asset and have it done instantaneously, like I just zap it to you. You need that to be on all the time. And that's where this is moving, because the speed of transactions are going to happen at human thought. And that's when, look, quantum is not that far away. It's already here. It's already being used. People just don't know it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
running in agencies like the NSA. I mean, they're using quantum computers. This is how they're able to monitor everything all the time, but they just don't talk about it. But it's there. I mean, and I know that. So imagine when quantum computer, like the internet, becomes available to the public to use, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's going to want everything instantaneously. And this is what the bedrock of this is.
So do you think this is the beginning of like a super like computer AI that would, one supercomputer? Do you think that the whole crypto thing could eventually move into that space? Like,
Well, I think that this pace of everything that's moving is so quick in this
yeah,
world right now that I think it's going to happen sooner than later. I think we as humans aren't probably psychologically, ready for it yet. We're the ones that are going to have to catch up. I think we still have to deal with governments and governments having geopolitical issues with each other. I mean, I have a theory that basically the world's going to break up into five different areas. We're going to
okay,
have areas of influence that are going to become digitally, of interest to the most powerful actors in that area. So, I mean, the U.S. and North and South America is going to be one. Europe
yeah,
is going to become the next. Africa is going to
yeah,
become the third, and then you've got Southeast Asia. I mean, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. That entire area that was divided up by the colonialists. My dream is it all comes together, and we have our economic union of India, right? So we
yeah,
have Greater India and Southeast Asia, which is Pakistan, all the old countries that were divided up for no reason, right? I mean,
yeah,
if we come together, we'll be the largest economy in the world. So that's one,
exactly.
and then the fourth one will be, you know, um, Asia Pacific, Australia and Indonesia and Vietnam and those guys, and then you have China. So
Hmm.
those are five areas where they have cultural, understanding, right? Because a
Hmm.
big part of this is people locally need to understand each other to trade with each other on a peer-to-peer basis. That's first. So
Yeah,
it happened, you know, from a ground up level. So you're going to have hyper growth coming from the 6 billion people that have been left out of development. They're really going to come from the ground up, and they're going to really do what they always did in the past. Is culturally they're going to barter and trade with us. I think that our economy, it has been changed only for the last 150, 200 years by the sort of global, the capital globalization corporate economy that was
hmm,
created out of Western thought. It was created out of
hmm,
London. It was created out of Amsterdam. It was bettered or made more aggressive in the United States. But if you look at traditional economies, they were always barter economies. They were economies that had to do with people transacting with each other and locally. And I think that's what's going to happen. And we're going to see these regions first adopt it. China is definitely going to adopt its own digital, currency faster than
right.
anyone else, and then it'll have an external connection to other digital economies. But as people get to be a part of this, maybe 50 years from now, you will start to see the global political kind of forces collapse because they just won't be able to deal with it. Because if people are trading with each other, there's no taxes. I
Hmm.
mean, the only way to tax people if they start dealing with each other. And some guy in India just bought a piece of the hotel in New York and he just invested in it. How are you going to track him? Who's he going to pay?
Do you think borders will become irrelevant? I know you said breaking up in five categories. Is that what you mean by governments might become irrelevant? If you're saying
Yeah.
so much power is now sitting outside their hands.
Yes, I think governments are going to become a service, and they're going to have I mean, regional governments or regional areas are going to be a service, which their job is going to be to provide security and infrastructure. This is what
Yeah.
governments are supposed to do, and I think they're overwielding. And the people, that are living in that area are gonna, I mean, have localized economies, and I think that's a more sustainable way. Because what's happening at the end of the day is, as we look at centralized production of anything, may it be food or may it be the agriculture in terms of um, uh, meat or poultry. When you have it condensed in one place, and you're using chemicals to do this, it destroys the actual fabric of the society, and it poisons it, right? So we're going to see a lot of societies becoming local, growing their food locally, generating their electricity locally, all in sustainable manners. So that's going to really change the way that distribution is done, from centralized, sort of power systems to agricultural systems. They're going to become broken up and localized. So it's going to be much easier for, really, townships are going to become, and villages are really going to become the power centers of the future locally, and then they'll all connect to each other like little, neurons in the brain. But it's
Hmm.
the same as it's easier for somebody to clean, the place around their house and pick up the garbage, right? Or somebody
Hmm.
owns a restaurant. If they just keep the place clean and tidy, the whole town will be, efficient and clean. Rather than you hire a garbage company that's run by, some inefficient government that, doesn't really do a good job, and they really don't care, right? So
Yeah.
that's the same thing that's going to happen economically with the digital world.
Wow, that's really exciting. I think this could be a whole other talk, because I think that's the really exciting stuff. We're
Yeah.
changing the world, and I think that's what maybe gets me up in the day, and that's probably what gets you up in the day. Um, so
So much so,
maybe just
Sanjeev, I haven't been shaving lately. I mean, a lot of the pictures you see lately with me is I just don't have the time to shave. I mean, because it's just there's so much going on that I feel like even if I sleep, I'm missing, something. So,
yeah. We're really, yeah, it's so exciting. Okay, so do you want to just end off maybe by tell us, what does the next 12 months look like? Like, what do you think? Maybe give some predictions, maybe a price prediction, or something major
yeah,
that happens in the crypto universe for our
yeah. So,
viewers. What do you think?
so I'm very excited about the announcement that I did with our common friend Kuram. I
Yeah.
really think the Miami initiative is going to be something that is so important, because it actually takes Bitcoin and it creates a floor for it, so it doesn't have the volatility. And to
Hmm.
do that, you've got to attach it to a real asset, like as a collateral, like real estate, for example, is one example. But I
Hmm.
think it's very important to take these initiatives of government officials, like the mayor of Miami, that's really talking about and talking logical sense about how things are changing in the digital world, and help him
Hmm.
combine that, and also help the government, governments like the United States, understand that this will help their economy rather than take away or impede their economy. Like, for example, the government in India, I think, has made a very bad decision by
Yeah, they have
outlawing
like outlawed, right?
cryptocurrencies.
They've outlawed crypto. What have they
Yeah,
told people to do? Invest
and
themselves?
it's silly because you can't, I mean, it makes no sense, because at the end of the day, people are going to transact anyway, and it would help them actually get everything on the surface rather than underneath the table. But I think, coming back to your question, when we're able to create that price floor for the Bitcoin and the volatility, and show that it works, which we're going to work on very steadily over the next few weeks, I think that'll cause now the Bitcoin price to actually go up, because it's a limited collateral asset, and then hopefully that'll lift the boats for all other cryptocurrencies as well that are solid. And Ethereum, I'm hoping, will really start to be utilized as a backbone for transactions. The other ones that are coming out, like the ones from Binance and so on, these are all blockchains that are really competing for business, right? So they're trying to be the most efficient, most secure, and that's what we want to see. We want to see a good amount of activity in them, so they can mature, rather than people gaming on them. Oh, this is going to go up, and why? Because Elon Musk said it. It has to have a real reason behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
No, thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to speaking to you again, my friend.